Donna Whalen would like to speak to us for just a minute on things she has going.
Hi, everybody. I'm in an organization called H2U. It's sponsored by Fawcett Hospital. It is not a replacement for the Cultural Center, but a close second. They have a general meeting once a month with a speaker. They have a book club, making cards club, lunch club, breakfast club, just a number of side organizations. And I'm telling you about this because last week at their general meeting, they hyped the computer club for us. And she let me speak a few minutes, and a handful of individuals took our brochure. So let's get some back and forth going here and try them out. The office is located behind Promenades Winn-Dixie. And the different clubs meet at different days. Movie group, coffee group, there's a lot going on there. So if you don't get a brochure, and I only have a few back there, then stop in the office and pick it up. Thank you. Questions?
Okay, let's start the Q and A.
Well, thank you guys all for coming out and braving this tropical storm weather here. It's barely been something, isn't it? Anyway, to kick off the Q and A today, I thought I'd start with a little topic that has kind of been hot here lately. And we might just talk about it and how it might impact you. Cloud strike. Was anybody impacted by the cloud strike?
Everybody was.
Yeah, a lot of people were. In fact, Debbie, my wife, was getting on a flight that day, Allegiant out of Punta Gorda here. And I started up the my laptop in the morning, and the first thing that comes up and says, oh, by the way, there's gonna be there was a huge IT outage. And it was like, really didn't, factor in what kind of impact this was gonna have. And sure enough, it just got worse and worse as the morning went on. They canceled all the flights up till about 2 o'clock, and she finally got on her flight to get out at about 3 o'clock. So that worked out for her, but other people, all kinds of machines were attacked during this thing. And actually, CrowdStrike, what it is kind of a business level antivirus protection system, super sophisticated. And so a lot of businesses subscribe to CrowdStrike to protect themselves against viruses. And this is acted a lot like ransomware, pretty much. But it was an update that happened in the early morning hours. So what happened? This was July 19th at 4 o'clock in the morning. CrowdStrike pushed out a patch or an update, and it turned out to be a bad update. Well, it affected 8.5 million computers out there all at one time. This was something that the users that didn't have any idea what was going on. All of a sudden, their system got this update, rebooted, and it went into what is called a blue screen of death. And I'll show you what that looks like here in just a few minutes. This really only affected Windows machines and basically Windows 10 or 11 machines, later ones. So any airlines or anybody that was using a Windows machine with CrowdStrike software was affected. And all of a sudden their machines rebooted and went to a blue screen of death. it actually caused quite a mess there. The worst one I heard of was Delta Airlines, who was down for 5 days because of this. And they're estimating it cost Delta Airlines about $500 million. And Delta, I think, is taking legal action against CloudStrike. But CloudStrike is there's gonna be a lot of going back and forth about this, claiming that they tried to help them out of this and this sort of thing, but it doesn't matter. $500 million is a pretty good hit.
I hope CrossTruck is out of business now.
Oh, they're still there. So what would happen is, once this update went out and the machine rebooted, it came up with what was called a blue screen, and this is what it would look like. And in the old days, I used to see a lot of these back in the Windows NT days. They were a lot more prevalent. You guys, has anybody actually ever seen this on their machine?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you have seen the blue screen of that. Typically what happens is, this is a point where it's not an application error, but it's a problem with the core operating system itself. There's an error such that it cannot continue to operate the system. And rather than let the computer continue to run and cause further damage to memories, especially file systems. In the old days, this was a huge problem, like I said, with Windows NT systems, that if you got the blue screen of death, there was a pretty good chance that once you tried to restart this thing, you were gonna have to rebuild the whole system. You had to start from scratch. And how this works was, Windows and actually all systems that are modern operating systems have operate in what's called a ring system. In the middle of the ring 0 is called the kernel. And this is where the most important software is running on the system. This is the part of your computer and operating system that talk to each other. This controls what goes on in your memory. This one controls the file system going out to your hard disk. And so it really is the brains behind the whole operation here. And how they protect themselves is they have what are called drivers. And to talk to, let's say, an application, let's say you're running an Excel spreadsheet. The Excel spreadsheet has to go through a driver to talk to the kernel to access memory or anything else. So that protects the actual core operating system from an application that is not really written very well. In the old days, especially if you were a C programmer, you could program to look for a memory location that didn't exist. Well, what would happen is it would try to pass that code to the kernel, and the kernel will validate that and says, well, you can't go there. So what it'll do is it'll crash the application. So on the very outside, you see ring 3, that's the actual application layer. So applications can crash, but the operating system is fine with that. It'll say, okay, well, I'm just going to turn you off, but the rest of the system will keep operating. The problem is with the CrowdStrike software and a lot of other software, depending on the situation, especially like antivirus software, has to operate in that kernel ring 0 system because it has to know what's going on. And so it actually watches everything that's kind of coming in and going out. And if it's something that's not supposed to happen, it's got to stop it there. Well, that was the problem with the CrowdStrike software. It does operate in that kernel space, and it had bad code in it, and it just shut everything down. So the question is, could this happen to your computer at home, get a blue screen of death for whatever situation? And the answer is yes, you definitely can. An example of this was on April 21st of 2010, a little antivirus software called McAfee. Anybody know McAfee? We don't recommend running McAfee, by the way. But anyway, it did the same thing actually. It was something like that. There was an update to the McAfee system, and it actually deleted a system file called SVC host .exe. What happened was it would reboot, you'd get the blue screen of death, and it would say, well, you got to reboot to get back to normal system. And all it would do is just, it would go back to the same blue screen of death. So it just reboot, 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 reboot. So that was back then. It actually affected millions of computers back then. And that was in the XP days. The other update, and this is recent, Windows isn't the only operating system that CrowdStrike affects. It actually affected 2 different distributions of Linux this year. It didn't quite have the same dramatic effect where it stopped the system, but it did cause some heartaches with both of those distributions. One of the things I found out I didn't know is the blue screen of death is a Microsoft thing. If you're operating Linux, it's actually the black screen of death. And if you're operating Mac OS, it's the pink screen of death.
All of them are good, right?
What's that?
All of them are good.
Yeah, any one of those is not good. In other words, it just says that the operating system can't operate anymore and it just stops everything. And just the way, the only way you can really protect yourself is to make sure you back up your system. Back up your important files, make sure you have a copy, a couple copies of your really important stuff someplace else, because you never know when not only something like this, which really wasn't wasn't a hacker or anything that did this. This was actually, a system that was trying to protect the system that actually caused it. But the only way you can really protect yourself is make sure you have the files that are really important to you backed up. And it's the old 3-2-1 rule. So the 3-2-1 rule, as anybody remembers, you should have 3 versions on 2 different media types. So one could be on a flash drive, or one could be in the cloud, and one should be in a totally different location. So let's say if you back up your system, and we use macro reflex to back up an image with, it's a good idea to have a copy of an image not in your location. Have it. Some people put it in the trunk of their cars or someplace else. But as long as it's not in the same place as, let's say your house, it is the only place where you have your critical files. So that's kind of the gist of it. The CrowdStrike. Anybody have any questions about that particular situation? Yes.
What do you do to fix it?
CrowdStrike, well, the interesting thing about that particular one, what it was when they downloaded that patch, it went to a particular file on the system. So what they had to do is actually reboot it to the safe mode, delete that file, and then reboot, and the system was fine. In that particular case. But like I said, depending on the severity of the blue screen, what caused it, you may have to reload your system from scratch. Like in the old days, that was a big problem. Not so much these days, they're a little bit kinder to it. But to tell you the truth, video drivers, they talk a lot to that kernel system. The video driver, all of a sudden it does a video update, you can end up with a blue screen of death just from a video driver. And they do that for performance purposes. If you can imagine the overhead it takes to transfer data all the way from the application layer, all the way down to the kernel, then all the way back again several times, it's a lot of overhead. Graphics are very intensive as far as the data transfers. So they operate very close to the kernel. So that's why some video drivers actually can cause a blue screen of death. Anything else?
Do people actually use antivirus programs, modern antivirus programs yet?
Say again?
Do people actually use antivirus programs yet? It's already built into.
Oh yeah, we actually recommend like Malwarebytes. So not only
Oh,
is
that's
Defender built into Microsoft's operating system,
That's a freebie.
yeah, or the paid version. They'd like to
Well,
pay for it.
yeah.
We operate in the free version. But it actually does a good job of catching things that kind of slide.
I'm talking about McAfee or Northern or something.
There's people out there that still have, Norton and Caffrey.
They caused a lot of
McAfee,
problems too.
Subscriptions, they cause a lot of problems. And so when they come in our office and I see them, I say, you know, whatever you do, don't pay for this again.
Yeah,
Usually what we recommend to them is we take it off. Cause at McAfee especially, I know in Norton. Used to be really, really good software. But over the years, they become bloatware. They just try to sell you more and more things all the time. And they're a real system resource hog, so they slow things down. And they've fallen from the top of the heap to the bottom, actually, both of them. I just wanted to throw that out there just to talk about CrowdStrike a little bit. The blue screen of death, if you do see it, that's what it is. And how to protect yourself is basically make sure you're backed up, make sure you have a couple copies of your critical data. You know, everybody has it, and make sure you're backed up somehow or another. Okay, you want to open it up for Q and A, question and answers. There we go, just jumped out of here. Get back to the our normal screen. Any questions? What? Yeah, Donna?
Is anybody in the group actually using Linux as an operating system? Would you say the learning curve is pretty steep on that, going from Windows to Linux?
Not as much anymore. They made the distribution a lot easier. I think more Windows like.
Okay, which Linux are you using? Ubuntu, and
3 different ones that I use.
3 different ones?
Yeah. On
Oh,
different
you're-
machines.
Okay.
They're all pretty good.
I don't know about the video.
The Linux distributions are improved and made it a lot. The Linux distros have been improved quite a bit over the years, and they're a lot easier to use, a lot more Windows-like or Mac-like. And once you get them loaded, it's pretty straightforward unless you have to delve into the system for a bit.
Mark, I don't use a password keeper. I have my own system. And every time I go out to a website, I get a little pop-up in the corner that says, do you want to keep this, save this to DuckDuckGo? And I always hit no, because I don't want anyone saving my password. Do you have any idea how I can get rid of that pop-up?
Oh, that's what I have to take a look at myself. I get it myself, and I pretty much do the same thing. I pretty much say, no, don't save the password and go on. But yeah, I mean, they all, Microsoft's Edge and also Chrome does it. They want to save your passwords, that sort of thing. I still like the use your memory or a paper word or paper password list. It's still, I think, the best way. There's a lot of password managers out there. I know I'm just not that familiar with them. And I wish I could figure out how to turn that up. If I can come up with it, Donna, we'll try to pass that on. Any other question?
how do you put a icon on the desktop from, like, let's say, for instance, YouTube?
Okay. You could create a shortcut. Usually, if let's say if you're watching a YouTube through Edge, up on the top right, you get the little dot. You go up there, click on that, go down to where it says more tools, and down there you can actually pin it to the taskbar if you want, or make a
Oh, yeah.
shortcut either way from there. That's from the browser.
I use Chrome. I wasn't able to do that.
Probably should be able to make a shortcut, I believe. I used to be able to drag it to the desktop right from the corner. I'll show you that tomorrow.
All right. I'm game.
Okay, Mark, I got a question. I have an iPad Air 2. And I have apps on there that are no longer supported by the update that I have on it. And it won't update any farther. Is there anything that can be done about that?
If you're Apple, probably wants you to buy a new one, but anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I'm really not an Apple guy myself. Did anybody else have any experience with? I know that they do move along with their OS updates, and all of a sudden, some applications just aren't supported anymore. I wish I could, I really don't know, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Recently, a couple of sites that I go to, Xfinity, for example, keep asking, do I want to accept or decline cookies? And every time they ask the same question, even though my answer is the same, is there any way I can get them to understand that it's once and done and stop bothering me?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, the cookie thing is, I don't know if you can get them to stop, because I think every time you go onto their website, they're gonna ask. You know, if you're not accepting them, then they'll ask again, because they want you to, they definitely want to ask or keep the cookie thing, so they keep track of when you're coming and going.
Okay.
But if anybody's got any other ideas on that.
Are there any late breaking bulletins on Windows 11?
Nothing, let's see, the earth shattering I can think of. The latest thing I've heard of, and I don't know if you guys have noticed that, when you do the latest Windows update, I believe you might see some changes as far as, it'll start harassing you a little bit more, a lot more actually, about saving, backing up your system to the cloud. That's, I actually just incurred that myself like yesterday, and it's annoying because I hate to save all my stuff to the cloud. I usually save my things locally. But it wants you to back up your system to the cloud. Well, the thing about backing up your system to the cloud, it's a lot of space if you think about it, or it could be. And all of a sudden, they'll probably start popping up since, you're running out of space. If you want to buy some more, we'll certainly sell it to you. So I have a tendency not to, especially back up my system to the cloud. Files and folders, that's one thing. There's a couple different methods to do that with. But images, total disk images, I always save those locally to like an external hard drive or a network attached storage, one or the other. But Microsoft is getting more and more intrusive about them insisting you use their stuff. Yeah, I'm afraid we're gonna see that for a long time, until we all switch over to Linux, and then that'll go away.
Mark, going back to the cookies question. My experience has been is you can't get into the website unless you do say yes to it. So what am I missing here? Is everybody saying no and not doing their thing, or are they saying yes and ignoring it?
Yeah, I think that goes from site to site. Some places, if you don't want to save it, it's fine. But other ones, you're required to accept the cookies or you won't get on their site. I think that's kind of the option you have at that point. But yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I try to decline it anytime I can. And that's a good thing to run super anti-spyware, because eventually, if you're on the web, you're gonna have cookies one way or the other. And it does a pretty good job of kind of clearing them all out there and kind of resetting them. Answer questions we might have that I can't answer. little early. Do you guys want to take a break? Oh, okay.
Speaking of Linux, how are you guys in the tech world? Are you getting up to speed on that so we maybe can transfer over to it?
Yeah, we definitely have some discussions going on with the group. A gentleman by the name of Alan Taylor kind of started us down the path of Zorin, which is a Linux distribution. There's, I don't know, there's over 650 different distributions. Lydia mentioned one of them, Mint, is one that just came out with the Cinnamon, and with the Cinnamon desktop. I'm kind of looking at that. Actually, I'm running Zorin right now on this particular laptop with our Zoom session. So I'm experimenting with it, and to be honest with you, I like it in the fact that it kind of takes me back to the days when Windows was a lot simpler. It's like I said, in these days, Windows is just, or Microsoft is just becoming so intrusive about everything that when you're back on an operating system like Linux, they're not, interested in saving data for money purposes, for monetary purposes. And you have a lot of choices there as far as what distributions you go with, what you feel comfortable with. And I find that it's actually a nice system to work with. There's a learning curve because they do and call things differently, but it's very Windows-like these days. The desktops are. So actually, I'm pretty impressed with it. Like I said, in the old days, you had to be a geek to run Linux. These days, you really don't. Like I said, we'll keep working on that, and if we can decide on what kind of distribution we should go with and recommend, we'll definitely go there, because there's still a lot of Windows 10 machines out there that can't be upgraded to 11. That I think Linux would be a great option for.
Mark, one of the things that I found with Linux, I don't like it always telling me I have to put in my password. It stops every so often and says, put in a password.
Yeah, that's part of the Linux security actually, is it won't allow you to update or install any software unless you put in the system password that you use to get in. And that's part of their security aspect, which is, like it or not like it, that seems to be the way it works.
Well, that's it. It's very time consuming. I was talking with somebody that's a techie the other day, and he was saying for the club, if we were to offer Linux, we better have a lot of people available to fix the problems that would be created by the fact that they just screw up things when they open different applications. We would have to learn the different applications and say, these are the only ones we can do.
Yeah, we probably have to stick with, pretty much a suite of applications like LibreOffice, that sort of thing, just to standardize them.
Just to standardize them.
Yeah.
But the point is, that's all we can do, standardize them. And then go from there and hope that Windows 11 is also a problem, but what choice do we really have? It's either Windows 11 or Linux.
Yeah, at this point, we're going forward into next year, that's gonna be pretty much the choices, unless you jump over to Apple with a Mac OS.
Okay, thank you.
Like I said, it seems like my little venture into Linux so far, if you're looking for a particular piece of software that runs under a Microsoft Windows, typically you'll find another version under Linux, but there are several versions out there probably. One of the things you might find is there could be a specific application that you use. It's Microsoft Windows specific only. And that's something you kind of have to look at before you really consider switching over to Linux. Can I give up this particular piece of software to go over to it? And there's other options. You can actually run Windows and run Linux in a virtual machine if you want to try that. I've done that and it's amazing how well that works. And that's freeware. I believe it's Oracle that there's a couple versions of virtual machines. But you actually run the operating system while you're running another operating system. And it works amazingly well. And there's some parts of Linux I haven't investigated yet where you can actually have it's called an emulator. So you can run Microsoft software in the Linux environment. It's called Wine, and it's something I haven't actually investigated yet or tried. Do you have experience with that?
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I've heard it's a hit and miss sort of thing. Some things work well, some things.
Games work well.
Games work well. I know that's right. There's a huge thing about, Linux in the gaming world, getting it to work in Linux.
What antivirus do you suggest? And have you ever heard of glaring utilities?
Yeah, I've heard of Clear Utilities. What we recommend in the group are malware bytes and super anti-spyware and wise disk cleaners is what we typically will load and run.
Power bytes and super spot
And typically we'll load up
and
and
defender.
Windows Defender is part of the Microsoft operating system.
What I have found out with my Blu-rays, if you don't get into it and set it right, it's a resource hole, just like McAfee and then it'll slow your machine down.
But I think just using those pieces of software, it'd be pretty successful at keeping most things under control there as far as antivirus and stuff. Pretty good. Yeah, I use them all the time.
You can, you can use your laptop.
Everybody else can't do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can use your laptop to Bluetooth to your TV screen, am I correct?
Depends on the TV. In other words,
Smart TV.
If you have a smart TV, yeah, you can usually cast to it. So you can actually cast your screen to the TV. Depending on the situation, but in fact, you can do it with your phone. In a lot of cases, if you have a Samsung TV and a Samsung phone.
A Samsung smart TV.
Yep.
And laptop is got Bluetooth and the TV also.
Yep.
So then you can watch movies on the laptop,
Mhm.
reflected on the TV.
Cast it right over the TV. Yep.
That will work.
Oh, yeah.
And how do you connect it best?
The best way to connect it?
I can't run wires.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi. Yeah, to cast it over there, I mean, you can actually, what I would probably do is, if you could run an HDMI cable from your laptop to the TV, that'd probably be the best option. No?
Can't do that.
No. Well, if you can cast it, then you can send the screen over directly to it. But that'd be probably the only other way I could think of right off the top of my head.
I hooked some speakers up, Bluetooth, that worked.
Does anybody else use Sonos? They're a real nice Wi-Fi operating system where
Yeah,
you can hook it up through the TV.
very expensive.
Yeah, they're nice. It's a nice system. Anybody else? I think it's time for a break. All right, guys, we'll crank it up at 4 o'clock.